If you are looking to become a professional automotive technician in 2025, I'm sure that you have questions and you're looking for some advice on how to best set yourself up for success. That's what we're going to be covering in this episode. Welcome to Reignited. Now, real quick, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, my name is Sky, and for the past 22 years, I've been working at dealerships. The last 14 of those, I've been a Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram technician. Yes, Dodge. So, of course, you know I do have plenty of work to do. Now, I just want to say that all of the opinions I'm giving you in this video are due to my experiences. Other people have different experiences, therefore their opinions will be different. I'm sure you'll be hearing that down below in the comments. That's perfectly fine. I want you guys to get as many different points of view as possible so you can make an informed decision about whether or not you want to make this your career. The very first question I have for you guys and girls is, do you love cars? Now, is it essential that you love cars? Absolutely not. I would say probably 85% of the technicians I've worked with in my career do not love cars. Do they even somewhat like cars? Sort of, some of them. It is not a prerequisite that you actually love cars, but I can say that it will actually assist you greatly in your career if you do have a passion for cars, because it's going to drive you to learn that much more and to proceed that much quicker in your career. It's something that I've always been highly passionate about in cars. Now, I didn't become a technician until a little bit later on in my life. And one of the reasons for that is because I was so afraid that getting into this career would ruin my passion for cars. That's what you always hear from people. They say, oh, don't do what you love, otherwise you're going to end up hating it. I will tell you that 1000% that has not been my experience. After being a tech for 14 years, I love cars more than I ever have before. I build custom cars and motorcycles in my spare time, aside from my job of working on cars. I just love cars. It's what I do. So I will say that for myself personally, getting involved, it was the best thing I ever could have done because it just expanded my knowledge so much more about cars and allowed me to do crazier things with them. If you guys are interested in checking out some of my other builds I've done on the channel, definitely wander about and check out. I've got a 1986 Chevy C10 that I swapped a 392 Hemi into.
Winning with a little bit of throttle in a bottle, run 733.
1248. This is an 05 Dodge Magnum that I also put a 392 Hemi in, and I turbocharged and supercharged it. I never would have had the courage to actually try to attempt these projects had I not achieved the knowledge necessary to do them, and the only way I could have done that was by becoming a technician. Now, I don't want to scare you away though. Like I said, 85% of my coworkers, they're not exactly into cars, and most of them are in fact very good technicians. So it's not a prerequisite that you have that, but all I'm trying to say is that this job is very physically demanding, it's very mentally demanding, and it's very, very dirty. You are going to be dirty every single day going to work. And I always felt like for myself personally, if I wasn't so passionate about everything automotive, that there's a lot better ways to make some money in this world. But even with that being the case, if you know the value of doing an honest day's work and you feel like you'd be good at this, I'm excited to get you involved in the field. One of the most common questions I get from people who are trying to get into the field is they ask, do I need to go to technical school first? And this could be somewhat controversial, but I'm going to say no, it's not entirely necessary that you do so. I myself, I didn't go to technical school before I got an opportunity to begin working as a technician. But at the same time, I had a pretty strong knowledge base to work off of because of my own interests to that point. I had learned on my own enough to actually step in. If you are coming from a ground zero where you have very little automotive education, I would absolutely recommend you go to technical school first. That'll give you that really good baseline to work off of. Now, I want to be very, very clear here that we are talking about baseline knowledge. One of the things that can be difficult for experienced technicians is when we get a new kid in the shop who's fresh out of UTI or something like that, Wyotech, and let me tell you, their ego is through the roof. They can accomplish anything, they can solve any task, and that's great. I'm so happy for them that they feel that way. But for us, Obviously, it's a little bit frustrating because these types of people, when you come in with an ego that big, you're not looking to learn, you're looking to tell others what to do. When the reality is you have no practical experience yet, you're not there yet, right? We much prefer it if these young guys come in and show that they have that willing to learn attitude, then we are all in for them. I'm telling you right now, guys in the shop are generally really good about helping these younger guys. They want to help pass that knowledge on because guess what? We all got that same help when we were starting out. There was guys in our shop who were able to help us out, give us advice, help us figure our way through some sort of diagnosis. So we have to pass that on to others. Now, some of us are better at that than others, unfortunately, but the truth is if you have that ready to learn attitude, guys will help you out. There's no question about it. So that is my one thing about going to technical school first. Understand what the goal of it is for, and that is to provide you an excellent baseline to work off of. Now, technical school is a lot of money. So if you're really trying to figure out, is this really worth it or not? Some people say, well, if I have this on my resume that I'm a UTI grad or WyoTech grad, that gives me a step ahead of everyone else who's applying for that same position. And that is true, but only to a certain extent. The reason for that is because coming from a dealership standpoint, when you start working for a factory, they want to send you to their own specific training school. They want to train you the way they want to. So your previous schooling, it really doesn't have any impact on how much you're going to get paid at that job. I really don't think it gives you that much of a leg up. But again, if you don't already personally have that base of knowledge to work with, I do recommend going to a technical school to get that first because that knowledge itself is what's going to give you the leg up. Another question I get from people is they say, is it too late? Am I too old to make a switch to this profession? And the answer is absolutely not. You can make that switch really whenever. I myself was 27 when I got a chance to become a technician, and I felt like I was so far behind. But in reality, it depends so much more on your attitude and the way you come to work every single day and how much you learn. That is what really builds your progress. So when you come into the field really doesn't matter. Your work product itself is what actually matters. Don't worry about it. If you think you're too old, you can always make the switch. Now, another question I get all the time is, what is the cost of this profession? Now, I'm not talking about financially. I'm talking about what kind of toll does it take on your body? We all know that doing this kind of work is very physically demanding, and that sort of stuff can add up over time. Now, myself personally, I'm what's known as a heavy line technician. I do a lot of engine and transmission work. Transmissions are my specialty because I find them more interesting, more intellectually challenging, a lot of those issues, but it's big, heavy work, and that stuff does add up over time. One of the reasons I'm making this video right now is because I am currently recovering from dual disc surgery in my neck. I had a bulging disc in there causing some nerve problems. So yeah, I just went through surgery, and it's as a direct result of the work that it is that I do. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to recover to the point where I'll be able to do my job as I did previously. But I wouldn't take it back for anything. Again, I believe in what I do. I love what I do. And I'm hopeful that I can get back to the point where I can do it again. That being said, I will say that generally my thought was always that you need to have some sort of an exit plan in place. My thought was that I was going to go full-time into some sort of teaching, educational type position by the age of 50. Now with this injury, that may have accelerated a little bit. But you have to know going in that there is the potential for it really starting to break your body down. But of course, there are things you can do to mitigate that. Don't take stupid decisions when you're young. If you can pick up this transfer case all by yourself and move it from here to there, that doesn't mean you should just because you can, right? Take advantage of the other people who are in the shop. Take advantage of the tools in the shop to not put your body in a compromising position that can cause premature type of injuries. If you make good decisions, you can avoid having the kind of issues that I've had. All right, we've talked a little bit about the negatives, but let's focus in on the positives. Why would we want to actually do this work? Well, I would say one of the benefits for myself is that it's intellectually stimulating. I think it's a very interesting field. Now, when I was 18 years old, I was working in an auto parts store, and I thought I knew a lot about cars. I was wrong. When I was 27 and I became a professional technician, I really thought I knew a lot about cars. I was wrong. Right now, I'm 41 years old, and I can guarantee you I know a lot about cars, and I'm still wrong. This field is endless, and there's so many different ways that you can take it, and I find that endlessly fascinating. The new technology as it comes out Really cool stuff. That's my favorite part of being a tech, is just reading and learning about all this new stuff as it's coming out. And it's also very fun to be part of this puzzle solving process that diagnosis is, to really nail down exactly what the root cause of an issue is. I find that very fulfilling personally. Now, another benefit I find is that there's a tangible result for your efforts. Now, early on in my career when I was working at a dealership, I was working in warranty administration, which, suffice to say, is just a lot of computer work. I'm moving numbers around on the screen. At the end of the month, some numbers changed from here to there. That's fantastic. You know intellectually that you made a difference, but it's hard to know for sure that you actually made a difference. Whereas, say a construction worker, if they're building a home, well, now there's a home there that wasn't there before. It's a tangible result for their efforts. It's the same thing being a mechanic, that you have this ability to where a vehicle comes in, it's broken, maybe some people are on a trip, they're stranded, and you are able to jump in there, fix their issue, get them back on the road, get them back on their trip. That's actually one of my favorite things to do. And there's something tangible about that. You're providing a service to the community that's a positive way, and it's something you can just go home and feel good about. One of the other benefits is that you are developing a skilled trade, which basically means you will have a job no matter what. Now, many of you who are viewing this video right now, you're not old enough to remember the 2008 financial crisis, but I went through that and I was laid off at the time because I had these easily replaceable skills. But once you become proficient in this industry, you're basically going to have a job no matter what. You'll be the last one in line that they're going to let go. And that was my goal when I jumped onto this profession, was to put myself in a position where if that recession ever happened again, I would be one of the very last to be let go. And that has proven to be the case. And there's incredible flexibility that's offered with this as well, because you can pretty much go anywhere in the country and have a job. For instance, I moved to Texas for a couple of years. I had a job in 5 minutes. I moved back here to Oregon. I had a job in 30 seconds. This skill set is in demand. And if you have any experience at all, you're going to have an opportunity. So there's a real stability to that. Obviously, nothing is foolproof to the economy, but for my money, I think that this makes a lot of sense. So do a lot of the other skilled trades as well. They're very similar in that way. But I think automotive specifically, people are going to have their cars fixed no matter what the economy is doing. I think it's a very secure profession. Now, final benefit I would say is that it provides you a good living wage that you can use to take care of your family. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the pay when you first start out is really difficult. We're gonna cover that a bit more here later. So it's tough right when you get going, but hopefully you don't already have a family you're trying to provide for. Hopefully you're still single, something of that nature, while you're learning, and that'll help you get a step ahead. But once you do actually drill down and actually gain the knowledge, get your certifications, and get to a certain level, this job does provide a good living wage for people. No, we're not gonna get rich off of it, but that's not really that important, is it, right? We just wanna do an honest day's work, take home our pay, take care of our family, and have a little bit left over for some of the things that we enjoy doing as well. This can provide that. Now, I know many of you right now are gonna say, well, what exactly is an honest wage? Like, how much money can I actually make doing this job? And the truth is that's going to be entirely up to you. That's something of a cop-out, but it is true. Because of this flat rate system that most all dealerships in the country use, how much you make is dependent upon, one, how good your skill set is, and two, how well you play the game. Now, me particularly, I hate the game. I'm not interested in playing the game. I just want to do my job. And so that restricts my paycheck a little bit. But I will tell you guys that generally in a given year, I'll make about $80,000 to $85,000 a year. That's kind of standard for me. And that's not that much money for a technician with my level of experience. You get a lot of guys with much fewer years in the industry, and they're making $120,000, $130,000, $140,000. I had a coworker who he was making around $135,000 a year. And it's just because he knew the system really well and was able to play the game and made it work to his advantage. So I'm telling you, it's entirely up to you guys how much money you can end up making in this field. Another question I get from young people all the time is, what kind of a shop should I be working in? Should I be working at an independent shop? Should I try to work for a dealer? Well, and my answer to this is entirely dependent on what are you trying to accomplish with your career? What field do you want to be in? If you want to be involved in motorsports and racing, I highly recommend you find a shop that has that kind of a background to get involved in. Same thing, if you want to be involved with fabrication, find a shop like that, because you want your education to be growing right from the first day you start working there. That way you can grow in that field. Like say if you started working in a fabrication shop and then you try to make a shift over to a motorsports shop, a lot of what you learned here, some of it may transfer, but not all of it. Likewise, if you went to work for a dealer and then tried to go to a fabrication shop, there's honestly not much that transfers between the two of those. So again, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish with your career, I recommend right from the word go, start with that kind of a shop. However, if you're looking to become just an automotive technician, I would recommend going with a dealership over an independent shop. Now, an independent shop does have some advantages. Likely you'll be doing a lot more hands-on work right off the bat. You'll be working on a multitude of different models, so you'll be learning a bunch of stuff all at once, and that feels good. But in my opinion, I feel like the cap on your pay is a lot lower at an independent shop than it would be at a dealership. Now, the reason for that is that the factory training that you will receive at a dealership gives you a couple extra certifications and just raises basically your level of knowledge that much higher. And you can specialize in things like, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram products. So you can go to any dealer in the country, you'll automatically have a job, and you'll automatically have a salary level that is here instead of starting down here. It'll be a much better leg up than if you just said, hey, I came from XYZ independent shop and I've done a lot of work on like a 1999 Honda Accord or a 2003 Mercedes. Like, that's not super helpful. So I still believe that a dealership is the better path. And another reason why is because the dealership will provide that factory training to you while you are being paid to work there. I think that's an invaluable resource. So if you really commit to that factory and get all of that training in, it benefits the both of you. Okay, let's say that that's your goal, that you want to work at a dealership, but you're thinking, man, I'm coming in here, I have no practical experience. I pretty much just have to take whatever it is that they give me. That's not entirely true. I'll be honest, right now is a great time to get into the field. You do have a little bit of leverage because there's just not that many people who want to do what we do. Like I said, there's some drawbacks to it as well. So there's really not that much competition. So if you've got somebody who's genuinely interested in doing the job, dealerships like to snap these people up. But I will warn you about a potential trap that's out there. And I've seen this happen many times with new guys as they come in. Now, it's common practice at a dealership that they won't start you off as a technician right off the bat. Sometimes you may get fortunate that you have a service manager who's willing to set you up as an apprentice with a mainline technician to really help you get to that level. That's an awesome situation. I highly recommend that if you can find that. But most often, what the service manager will do is that they'll hire you on for the lube bay. Essentially, you're going to be doing oil changes all day long. Now, I don't want to dissuade you from that because there is stuff that you can learn, and it's a good way to ease into the industry, get your feet wet without too much pressure. However, there's a trap involved here. And that is that if you are any sort of a decent employee who really works hard and takes pride in their work, you will very quickly become the best lube bay tech that they have at that shop. Believe me, it's not that difficult. But when that happens, the service manager might come to you and say, I really respect what you're doing here. I like your work ethic, all of these other things. I'd like to make you the head lube bay technician, and I'm going to put you in charge of our entire lube bay. And man, that really feels good, right? Because you're like, man, he sees the kind of hard work that I'm putting in here. He knows I'm a good character. Like, I want to repay his trust in me and do the best job that I possibly can for him. And so you become the head lube bay technician. Maybe it comes with a small pay raise or something like that.
It's a trap!
Having an efficiently running lube bay in a shop is one of the most difficult tasks that a service manager has. And so if he finds somebody who is halfway proficient at actually running that, he wants to keep them locked in and locked down. He doesn't want to let them get away to do anything else. He wants that running as smoothly as possible. So it's something you could get stuck doing when in reality, you really wanted to be a mainline tech anyway. And while there is things to learn with the lube bay, generally within a 6-month period of time, you've learned everything you can learn about that particular setup, and you need to move on to more challenging subjects. So my advice to you is when you're talking with the service manager, you guys need to be talking about what the eventual goal for you at that place is. Where do you want to land? Like, what sort of experience are you trying to get? Now, with this being the case, You could say, hey, I have no problem starting off with a loop bay, but let's put a cap on it. Let's say 6 months or a year, and after that time, I'd like to be moved into an apprentice technician position, or even put out there on the main line on my own so I could fend for myself. This is something you guys need to put in writing. I cannot emphasize that enough. You need to put an actual plan in place, have you guys both sign it, and have it on the record that this is where we're going from here forward. Because if he just verbally says, oh yeah, no question, we're gonna get you out there. Then when you ask him 6 months later, he'll say, oh yeah, no question, we're gonna get you out there. A year, oh yeah, no question, we're gonna get you out there. Like, it's a broken record, right, guys? So get it in writing. If you have a place that is not willing to put something down in writing, go somewhere else. I'm not kidding. You have a little bit of leverage. Find some place that wants to invest in you as an employee. And when you do, that's where your success will begin. All right, let's talk about tools. It's one of our greatest assets as technicians is tools, but there's a pitfall involved there as well. And that is pretty much all the young guys, when they come in, they want to prove that they're real techs. And what's one way they can do that? Well, they buy a brand new giant toolbox. They fill it with all these tools, and look how professional I am. And now you have a $450 per week payment to the tool trucks. We need the tools, we have to buy them, but you can do so at an appropriate rate that you actually need them, and you don't always have to buy the mainstream tools. A lot of times there's a lesser brand that's fully as capable of doing the job. It just doesn't come with the prestige of coming off the tool trucks. Now the tool trucks themselves, I love these guys. They're generally great guys who run the tool trucks, but let me tell you, they will lend credit to pretty much anybody out there, but with two strong negatives. Number one, they're collecting on a weekly basis, and number two, their interest rates are astronomical. So yes, most of us, we didn't have money to buy tools to begin with. You do have to go into some debt, but perhaps think about doing so with a low interest rate credit card, something of that nature. And again, don't overspend on tools you don't know if you need or not. When you're early in your career, you're really not sure what your specialty is going to be, so I encourage you to learn as much as you can about all of them. But that doesn't mean buy every tool that you see, right? All technicians, our toolboxes are full of tools. There's quite a few in there that we bought that we never ever use, and they sit there collecting dust. So understand which tools do you actually need and prioritize those. So how do you do that? Well, obviously there's some base tools that pretty much all technicians need. That's maybe something I can do another video on later. But I usually keep two lists, a need list and a want list. Now, the rule of thumb in pretty much any shop is if you borrow a tool more than 3 times, you need to buy that tool for yourself. So that tool is going to go on that need list. And then there's the want list, those tools that will make certain jobs easier, but you can get away with not having them. So try to build up slowly, and that includes with toolboxes. Try to get a used toolbox that is of the appropriate size that you need right now. One of the great things about toolboxes is that they don't really depreciate in value all that much over time if you're already buying them used. So a number of years later, 4 or 5 years later, when you upgrade to a different box, you can sell that used box for almost the same price as what you paid for it to begin with. So I highly recommend start with buying a used toolbox and just get some tools that are appropriate for your level of what you need right now. That way, you're not spending money you don't have, and you're not crushing yourself under a mountain of debt. It's a problem I've seen with so many new technicians, and it just totally burns them out of the profession because they're like, man, I have this massive debt of tools. I'm not making barely any money. Why am I doing this? And so they walk away. And the sad part is they have to actually give all those tools back because they can't pay for them anyway. So it's actually really a bummer scenario. I don't want that to happen to you guys. Be smart with your tool acquisition. All right, let's talk about pay. Now, this is the area where I feel like this trade is lagging behind the others the most. I'm saying that essentially you could go make a bunch more money immediately if you're an electrician or a plumber, something like that. And that's what kind of dissuades a lot of people from getting into the automotive field. And so that's why I feel like you have to have some sort of passion for actually doing this kind of work, because why would I do this for less pay when I can go do these other skilled trades and make a lot more money initially? And honestly, I can't really argue against that for myself. Now, when you do become more experienced, the pay levels, they start to equalize a little bit. I still think you can make more money as either a plumber or electrician overall than you can as an automotive technician. But the pay level does rise to an adequate level, like I said, to take care of your family. Now, one of the things about this industry, though, is that we are based primarily off of what's called flat rate. Now, if you go to a shop and you're brand new in the field and you're saying, hey, I'd love to be working as a technician, and they say, fantastic, no problem. We've got a stall open out there for you. We can get you moved into, and we'll have you working on flat rate right off the bat so you can make all sorts of money. Walk away. Now, look, I know that comes across as a little bit strong, but I'm saying this with 100% honesty. Don't accept that deal. If you are working off of flat rate straight with no experience whatsoever, you are going to be making less than minimum wage working that job. But it's of no consequence to the shop you're working for, because the work that you are putting out, they are taking advantage of that. You are the one who's going to take the hit on that. Let's talk about flat rate and how it can be both beneficial and detrimental. We're going to go through a couple of examples here, and for those technicians who are actually watching this video, guys, relax. These are really basic examples. I know there's a lot more nuance to it than this, but this is the general idea behind it, right? All right, so first off, let's say that we're gonna be doing a water pump in a car. Now, the thing you need to understand is that every vehicle, for every job, there is a specific time allowance to do that job. That is the flat rate for that job. So let's say we're going to do a water pump in a car. This is under customer pay. So this is C for customer pay. The job pays 1.5 hours to replace that water pump. Now, with any job, we need to actually figure out that the water pump is the problem first, right? So there's some diagnosis time involved. Now, most shops, I say most, they will provide 1 hour of diagnosis time. That's what they're charging the customer. It's a flat fee, 1 hour of diagnosis to figure out exactly what's wrong with your car. It does not matter if it takes you 10 seconds to figure out what the problem is or the whole entire hour. They're going to charge the customer that 1 hour of diagnosis. So for that job total, you should be receiving 2.5 hours total, right? So let's examine how this could work in your favor. Let's say you were able to do the diagnosis in 10 minutes. No problem at all, right? And then you go to do the job, and it's something that you've done 10 times before, so you've got it almost down to a science. So now you can do this job, and let's call it, call it 8/10, something like that. So between the 8/10 of time that you have to do the job, let's call it 2/10 of time to diagnose it, you've got 1 hour into this total job. Well, guess what? You're going to get paid that whole 2.5 hours, no matter what. That's what this game is all about. It's all about efficiency. Now you can understand why experience plays into it so much, because the faster and more efficiently you can do these jobs, the more extra bonus you can make on each job it is that you do. That's how the whole system works. But let's go the other direction with this. How can flat rate work against you? Well, imagine that you are a brand new automotive technician and they give you a job that says you have a coolant leak, and it takes you the full hour to verify exactly where that coolant is coming from. Okay, we've got it now. It's coming from the water pump. I know it for sure. That's what it needs. Okay, that's fine. Now you get an hour and a half to do the job, but you've never done it before. So now you're looking up the service procedure, trying to figure out where all the fasteners are, trying to figure out what you do and don't actually need to take apart on this thing. Maybe you take apart some extra stuff that you realize later on, oh, I didn't need to do that. And it takes you about 2 hours to do the job. So you're still not feeling too bad about yourself, but now you've got 3 hours into the whole job. What are you getting paid? 2.5. So you've just cut your own wage by that much because you didn't have the experience to do the job within the time it said you should be able to do it in, right? But let's take it one step further. Now imagine you're working at a dealership. Now the dealership obviously is going to be doing a lot of warranty work. Well, warranty has their own flat rate times for everything there is to do on a vehicle. As a general rule, you will find that this flat rate time to be about 50 to 60% of the time for customer pay. So in this same scenario, if you were replacing a water pump on a car under warranty, likely the factory would pay you somewhere around 8/10 of an hour to do that job. Now, diagnosis time is a little bit more tricky. Now, different factories handle this different ways, so I can only speak to how Dodge does it. But Dodge technically claims that diagnosis is built in to their replace times, which is an absolute joke. Now, you can apply to actually have additional diagnosis time, but you better be able to prove why you had that extra time needed to do that. So again, having your story in place is very important, but very limited here. Now, let's say that as a general rule, a lot of times they will kind of allow between, I would say around 3/10 of time for diagnosis, unless you can really give them a good reason why it took you longer than that. So for the whole entire job here, period, you're probably going to get paid 1.1 hours under warranty to do the same job that under customer pay pays 2.5 hours. Does that really seem fair? Well, fair or not, that's the reality of it. So imagine you're that same brand new technician and you're trying to figure all this stuff out. Now you've got 3 hours in this job and you're getting paid 1.1 hours. That is the quickest way to go broke and run someone out of this business, is to have them under flat rate right off the bat. The better situation by far is if you can find a shop that's willing to bring you on at an hourly rate, at least for the first year. Now that hourly rate may not be all that good, but you're gaining experience, which is worth far more than the money you're actually earning, right? So try not to read too much into that hourly rate that you're actually getting paid. But if you've got a shop that's willing to do that, that means that they do believe in you and they believe that they could have a future with you if they set it up that way. Again, if they're putting you on flat rate right off the bat, they couldn't care less about you. Let's take a few minutes to talk about mistakes. Let's say you finally have that job, you are a line technician, and you've just made a mistake and you're like, oh no, what do I do? And then you're really upset because you're thinking, oh man, I'm brand new at this. I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to tell my service manager because he's going to get so mad at me and I could potentially get fired. Calm down. Take a deep breath. The reality is that any service manager who's been in this business for any length of time understands that new technicians are going to make mistakes. That's how it is, right? So go to your service manager, inform them, let them know that you did make a mistake. And if they're any good at their job whatsoever at all, they'll take in the information and they'll say, okay, what do we need to do from here to correct this, right? They're looking for a path forward and they're not going to get upset about it because this is what happens with new technicians. It is very common. They're not going to freak out. They're not going to fire you. The worst thing you can do is to cover it up or not tell anyone and hope nobody notices. Guys, do not do that. If you make a mistake, bring it to your service manager's attention so you both can correct it together and move forward from there. Now, another aspect of making mistakes comes from my own experience. I know that very early on in my career, I was extremely hard on myself when I did make a mistake. For weeks afterward, I would berate myself saying, how could you possibly have done that? And it comes up in your head over and over and over again. Guys, that is not good for your mental health. You've got to be able to let this stuff go. Yes, you made a mistake. And guess what? There's a lesson there. You learned something right from that mistake. As long as you apply that knowledge moving forward to keep from making that mistake again, that's where you need to leave that. Drop it right there, leave it behind you, move on to the next thing. You're not going to be productive and you're not going to be your best self if you're constantly beating yourself up about these mistakes that have happened in the past. So let that stuff go. Throughout this video, you've heard me use the terms automotive technician and mechanic somewhat interchangeably. And the reason for that is because I never used to see a differentiation between those terms. To me, automotive technician was just a slightly pretentious way to say that you were a mechanic. But these days, I see it a little bit differently. Now, in my mind, a mechanic is a parts changer, right? Somebody who's just throwing on a set of brakes and tires, things like that. Or somebody tells them, oh, this needs this part replaced, so they put a new part on it. That is a mechanic. An automotive technician is somebody who really dives down deep, does the proper diagnosis, and figures out which parts they are that need to be replaced, if any at all. That's what we want to strive to be in our career. We want to strive to be the automotive technician who really is using their brain and diving down deep to figure out the root cause of these issues. Now, along those lines, there's a term that we use in shops that is somebody who is shotgunning parts. Now, essentially, they're just boom, and they're throwing a ton of parts at a car, and hopefully, in the spread of all those parts that they put on there, hopefully something in there fixes it, right? That is something we are trying to avoid doing. We don't want to be shotgunners. We want to do accurate diagnosis. We want to be able to show through our steps why we came at the conclusion we did as far as which parts we were replacing, and that is what makes a good automotive technician. Look, I'll admit there's some challenges going into this career, but like I said, it can be very fulfilling. And again, I'm so happy to see that there's still young people who are interested in getting in this field. It's endlessly interesting to me. I still love cars. I still love working on cars. And while it's a job like any other and there's challenges that come with it, there's nothing really else that I think I'd rather be doing. But I want to hear from you guys too. What other questions that I didn't answer in this video do you have? What other things would you like to know about this particular industry, or something you feel like could really help you out? Let me know in the comments down below. Perhaps I'll have a chance to do a more detailed video based on your comment. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Reignited.